everybody. With the Europe, if we compare with the European countries, we compare with the American countries, our leaders are equally competent, I would say sometimes more competent than those countries. And definitely the credit goes to the robust processes and systems in private sector as well as public sector organizations. I will say only this much at this moment.
Dr. Joseph, would you like to share your views, from given your vast experience in this area?
I come from the educational sector, and I teach leadership to managers and management students. And the first question that I ask them is, are you a leader? And to my surprise, very often, more than 50% of them tell me, I am not a leader. I move on from there to help them to identify their dominant leadership style from the 9 styles that I have adopted. And after a few sessions, they are able to tell me, this is my dominant style. The styles are moral leadership, customer service leadership, entrepreneurial leadership, innovative leadership, strategic leadership, transactional or bureaucratic leadership, visionary leadership, charismatic or authoritarian leadership, and empowering leadership. So once the students or the managers identify this dominant style, I tell them that each style has a negative trait associated with it. And therefore, how to become a transformational leader, overcome that negative trait. From there, we move on to organizations. Very often, business organizations as well as NGOs or governments can also have a dominant style based on the founder or the major leaders. And they give an organizational culture to that, and therefore each of those organizations may have a dominant leadership style, say moral leadership or customer service leadership and so on. So how to develop leaders, how to develop transformational leaders, and that's a challenge which most of the participants undertake. Some of them succeed very much, some of them do not. But this is what I normally do, and this is what I teach.
Very insightful. Rajiv, I know that you have some views around leadership in the new context of the way the world is headed. So, please.
Yeah, I think thank you very much. I think the starting point is that we need to kind of differentiate between managers and leaders. When we talk about leadership in the organizational context, we are talking about business managers and leadership in the same way. These two are two different things. A manager would be having what is called a program thinking, process thinking available with him. And a leader or a leadership quality of a person or an organization would be that with a perspective. Now, in the context which you're talking about, the recent one, in fact, as recent as the Lehman Brothers in the post-Lehman context, this change has become more imperative. And this differentiation has become all the more glaring. There are more than reasons, in fact, one, to kind of understand this, but I'll begin from the first one. We see that 1998, if we see, is the business driver, was the globalization forces. And the technical driver was the Y2K bug. Now both interacted, and this created a technology of internet which gave us the global tool to communicate. This also made it possible, in fact, that we could develop ERPs which could help us manage our global resources. We came out with solutions of virtual organizations which were created, the BPOs and the KPOs came up. The dot-com boom and then the dot-com burst happened. But then the world had changed and transformed. The uniqueness about leadership as an organizational value, people and processes together had come to be kind of fructified in what we saw happening with the Lehman Brothers falling down. Till such time it happened, the world was thought to be going always northwards. People thought that there was total sanity available before, but soon they lost differentiating between the prime and subprime, and the whole world fell into recession. They realized that leadership, organizational leadership and people leadership have to be viewed in a different context. Probably we had all missed out what is called the perspective, the behavioral pattern changing we had failed to see that the business driver by 2008 had become continual change itself. Now this called for wholesale transformation, not just, kind of window dressing that could have been thought to avert this as well as to manage it. Now there are reasons for it. If we just analyze what has changed pre-2008 and post-2008 and how does this impact leadership and branding leadership of the kind that will be relevant for us to make our organizations forward-looking, futuristic and future-proof ultimately. The question comes that now if continual change is the business driver, which means parameters are changing because of this infusion of technology, the rate of obsolescence of ideas and technology put together, and business dynamics changing the way they are changing. Parameters are changing not sequentially anymore but simultaneously. So the magnitude of change and the complexity of change is becoming a little less manageable, little and more unmanageable from the point of view of the organizational context. The technical driver today is those IT tools which can help us manage this level of complexity. If we see in place of internet, we are developing Web 2.0, 3.0 applications which are making the user content uploading easy and more interactivity is coming into place. We also see that in place of the ERPs, which are still state-of-the-art technologies, SAP, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, they look static and sterile when you compare them with the BPPs, the business performance platforms, which are business knowledge, processes, and solutions all fused into one on real-time basis. Now that is the extent of challenge of change. So leadership, if I would say, gets defined in terms of managing this change and thriving in this change. Creating that method in the madness and managing it, that will be the brand that would hold good for future, and a future that has already arrived. This is based on the premise basically, and on this we can discuss a little later, that the old world order, the pre-Lehman Brothers and the post-Lehman all across the world, we may as a country, as a business, we may not have been impacted so very directly, but then the world has changed thereafter. The thought processes, the business dynamics, the market turbulence which has to be factored has come into play from that time onwards in all countries in equal measure. That is the insightful knowledge that we have gained from out of what Lehman Brothers did and what they did not or what they could not possibly do. The world in the pre-Lehman phase was transactional. It was looking in linear extrapolation methodology, wherein post-Lehman, linear methodology, linear thinking processes have converted themselves into non-linear processes which have to be created, creative solutions have to be found, agility and ability to cope with change, deal with uncertainty, deal with ambiguity, decision making in a state of semi-dark has become relevant. So any leadership brand, any leadership type, business, processes, systems and people of the type who have to be agile, who have to be nimble enough, they have to respond as fast as in reaction time. So that process has to be crystallized, and all organizations which are going to be moving forward would be the ones who will make themselves future-proof, would be the ones who conform to this new changed reality. The whole dynamics of the world has changed. So branding leadership and leadership brand that will hold good will be the ones that conform to this and harmonize this in their structure so that they can live without it forever. I think that would be the starting point of saying as to what would be the direction of the organizations and particularly the leadership, which was no longer like managing through a program thinking process, but a leadership with the perspective with created right side usage of mind would then be interpreted in the forward-looking style of leadership management.
Great. Thanks, Rajiv. And Radhika, finally.
Just from my experience and what we've seen across organizations, genuinely leadership brand is not the prerogative of the big, the rich, the large. It's really on how you believe what is core to your organization and what will sustain it from an organizational context, and what are you doing thereby to ensure that you are getting what you're putting your investments in. So it's really, I've seen really small organizations, they needn't be in our list of top companies for leaders, and yet they are leaders in their own right. They're doing a great job of what they need to do. They're outreaching industry. They're managing it very well. I just feel that we need to keep chipping away. Don't lose focus. So even if a company like Hindustan Unilever says that when they went to campuses, it was not about day 1, day 2. There were times when they were day 4, day 5, but they kept going because it was for them core to their strategy and how they would be growing. And yet when I talk to KSB Pumps, which is a 300 crore organization, and it says that You know, in the Bombay-Pune belt, we were kings once, and being a German multinational company was great, and after the ITES boom, no one wanted to work with us. I think we will do what we have to do. We can't look at trends and say it's changing and so it's not. There are events, but what is core to us, we will. So I think your leadership brand is core to what works for you, and it's how well, I think it's just about aligning all the vectors in that direction.
Great, very, very interesting. Now, something Rajiv said that I'm just going to, dwell on for a little bit. You mentioned something about the need for creativity, constant creativity to take care of the changing paradigms. So, now typically creativity and consistency of process, whatever, don't really go always hand in hand. So this is to the entire group really. But while building a leadership brand, is there the need to go in any one route vis-a-vis the other? So when I'm talking about routes, creativity versus consistency, because if you look at HUL or some of the GE processes, they're all about consistency. How do we get our processes straight? The leaders' styles and all could be extremely different, but it's about consistency of process, whereby we are able to build that leadership pipeline. So anyone would like to?
Nancy, on this, in fact, basically, what I would now mean, in fact, basically, is that the way we have developed, and the